Hello and welcome to episode 23 of The Dive. This week, Kobe is out because all casters are dying, apparently.
Yeah,
Zyrene's been sick, Kobe's sick. You had a delayed flight.
Flowers is also sick. Yeah, I literally just came from the airport directly to here. My flight got so bopped, so I woke up at 2 a.m. Here I am to do some dive.
Yep.
Wonderful.
True passion. We have Freak once again. He's like the token guest whenever someone else can't do it. It's great.
At
I'm
this
glad
point,
that
is
I'm
he
chosen.
even a guest, or is he just kind of...
I think we're obligated to do so because we put him in the video. So we just have to like bring him in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, what are we talking about today?
We are going to be talking about NA LCS MVP, talking about how Bjergsen won that but didn't actually get into All-Pro. We're going to be talking about some Worlds qualifications as well, and then we're going to probably hit up just some state-of-the-game style stuff.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different topics to talk about this week, so we'll try and keep it pretty focused. I do want to start just with, congratulations to Bjergsen winning MVP, but also there is still a little bit of confusion that I think we should clear up around the MVP because Jensen was first team, and we want to break down just the differences in the voting process between all LCS first team and MVP.
Yeah, so I guess my stab at it, it's interesting because I remember a year or so ago when you started pitching, like, we should revamp this, make it a more transparent process. Like, should we pick a different term or like a description for how you determine an MVP? Like, is it, because I had like all these ideas like, if you drop this player, could they not win anymore with a replacement? Like almost value over replacement is that most valuable player, right? Because you can't replace him. Is it who you draft first? Is it who played the best this split? And at the end of the day, it was like, just call the most valuable player, and whatever
you define as valuable.
Right, whatever you define, which means it's always going to be aqueous. Like, you and I could have different criteria on what makes an MVP, but we're voting on the same ballot, and that's just what we decided is what it is. So it does come down to the ballots of like the casters and the some of the other Riot people who work on the show. There's media votes, and then there's also just a strict tally from player of the games. Basically, what every player of the game is
also
one
pro
first
players
place
and coaches.
vote. And yeah, right. Pro players and coaches are also involved. And right, every single player of the game is worth one first place vote. So Bjergsen got 12 extra first place votes, I believe, and then Jensen got like 9 or 6 or something.
8 maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I did do a lot of like math and thinking about this. When Jensen got all LCS first team over Bjergsen, you get 3 points for first place vote, 2 points for second, 1 point for a third. And it's the same ballot members for both awards. Jensen got 94 points. Bjergsen got 92 points. So incredibly close. Literally one person swapping Jensen over Bjergsen or the other way. If one person would have put Bjergsen first team and Jensen second team, they would have been tied. Right? That's how close the vote was out of 40 ballot members. MVP, even if player of the game didn't matter, could still be different. Because in mid, if you put Jensen first, you're almost always putting Bjergsen second and vice versa. But in MVP, you're going to have guys like Ole, who I know Freak voted for his MVP, X-Smithy, that can fit in and mean Bjergsen gets 3 points and then Jensen gets 1 point.
You're stealing votes essentially from the other roles.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, there is this player of the game portion, which is just this mechanism we have to make player of the game valuable, as well as kind of get rid of a little bit of the recency bias that exists in voting. So if someone has been consistently killing it throughout the split, they get rewarded for that at the end. So what's funny is, yes, you can have different definitions of first team versus MVP, but the voting point tally was still a 2-point win for Jensen. It was exactly the same differential as first team. It was something like 63 points to 61 points. But Bjergsen won by 10 because he had 12 player of the games. Jensen had 8 player of the games, which gave him 12 more points and overcame the 2-point deficit pretty easily. So I think that's the last we need to talk about this, right? Yeah. I think the system's going to be staying the same next year unless we revamp it.
And I've always personally felt that as long as it's transparent, as long as people can actually see who's voting for what, and those people are comfortable defending their own votes, then I don't really see a big issue with it. I didn't like systems where you couldn't actually tell what's going on, who wins why. So to me, the fact that the ballot's actually out there, that you can talk to some of these people. I know Zyrene recently released a video trying to explain his votes because he actually had, different vote for first team mid versus the MVP. I believe he put Bjergsen for MVP, but Jensen for all team first mid. And he's willing to defend that, then go for it.
There is one thing actually that came to my mind, and I don't think we have to have like the discussion here, but maybe we think about for next year, is I don't think any of the TSM representatives voted for Jensen, whereas Bjergsen got 3 MVP points from C9 members. And I'm not saying TSM troll voted. Like, their votes were for very good people who I think would be deserving to be on the ballot.
Yep.
But conspicuously or not, Jensen was not on the TSM votes whatsoever. Like, Smoothie got some, but we know Smoothie's not going to win MVP.
And there's always concerns about that because the best way to make sure the person on your team wins is to not vote for their biggest team of competition. Right. And if you do that, is it disingenuous? Do you actually believe that? It's hard to say, because even if you do fully believe that second person shouldn't even be in the top 3, if everyone else does, you can look like you're trying to manipulate the system. So it does sometimes kind of create that awkward situation, or maybe even pressure people into voting for that second place person when they wouldn't otherwise do it.
Yeah, for what it's worth, TSM ended up putting Smoothie on their ballot, who's still a C9 player. And I had a pretty decently long discussion with Parth where he was like defending Smoothie for C9 because he sees Smoothie as the guy who makes plays and shot calls and is the reason C9 is good. So in that way, I'm willing to say that they weren't trying to gain the system.
I fully think that he actually believed in those votes because I had a similar comment.
But I do think there's been a problem in the past where people have had some pretty bad ballots. Anyway, we have most of the world's teams. We're going to kind of go one by one here, but we all just came back from Boston. The finals was pretty hype. I did want to recap TSM versus Immortals because that series, I can't believe it didn't go 5 games. I was waiting for the 5th game so much. Game 3, I think Immortals was in a position to win, and Game 4, they were definitely in a position to win.
Yeah, I'm going to post a Reddit comment where he said, or she said, it was essentially 5 games, where Game 4 ended when the middle inhibitor died, and then you had Game 5, which is the TSM comeback, right? Like, TSM still wins overall. They had that 20-1 Game 5 victory, and Immortals got their 7-0 perfect game shutout in Game 4.
I mean, it is pretty crazy, and it's one of those things where, to me, that's experience in the finals on the biggest stage. That's actually staying calm. That's one of the things that people talk about. And we did actually see a number of examples of that in the finals. I think of First Blood in game number 1. Cody Sun and Olay basically dying to a simple Gragas gank as Tristana and Morgana. They mess up the rocket jump buffer. They mess up the Black Shield timing. They mess up the flash. They mess up literally every aspect of it.
I remember you saying all of this.
To then die, right? And to me, this is what I think is an amazing bot lane. Very, very
good.
top level bot lane. That's nerves. That's pressure, right? And same thing to me in game 4, because I don't think you can explain any other way the things that they were doing. The amount of mistakes you have to make from the position that they were in. Over 10K up pretty early with multiple inhibitors down. And I believe they even had Baron.
They had a Nexus turret down too.
It was such an easy game to win from that point that if you let them play that in a scrim or something, they probably win it 99 out of 100 times.
Oh, yeah, easily.
I want to bring up a Kobe point since he's not here. An honorable mention for him. The Trist Morg lane.
Yeah.
He's told me after the cast, he's like, I was going to say it was an ungankable lane. I'm really glad I didn't say that. Right? Because I agree with him. If you execute that perfectly, it's basically an ungankable lane because the Trist can buffer any Gragas CC with the rocket jump if you time it properly, and the Morg can just black shield herself. And I think that's actually why they screwed it up, because Cody messed up his rocket jump, and then Olay was like, oh crap, he got hit. Black shield. He's like, now I have no black shield for myself. Someone's definitely going to die now.
To give a point to Cody-san on that, though, right, the buffer, the animation, right, the rocket jump is you have a quarter second while you're casting the animation of rocket jump. You can be CC, but then the rocket jump casts at the end of the quarter second, and you start flying. So you have a quarter second of like immunity, if you want to consider it that way, for those who don't understand the mechanic. But you don't know, because I think Sven had flash up at the time. So like if he body slam
flash you,
if he has body slam flash, you have to do it early. You have to do it when he's 500 range away. And if he doesn't flash, then you're like, okay, well, then I rocket jump too early, and which is what happened. And like at the end of the day, like I think Ole should have realized I'm not in flash range. Let's put the black shield in, and that's fair, right? And Cody's son, I think, rocket jumped in case there was a flash, and I think that's probably correct from him. And then Ole again didn't black shield.
And I mean, I think
that's a situation where you blame Ole.
That's nerves and that's communication, right? Because if you're really scared that you're not going to be able to do it, you can just see Cody Sun early flash. That avoids it 100%.
Also true.
Or you early black shield and rocket jump. Then worst case scenario, Ole had to black shield himself and probably flash or whatever. But anyway, point is there was nerves that affected this series, I thought. And I thought it should have gone to a game 5, certainly, in the position that they were in game 4. And I give a lot of credit to Biofrost for actually capitalizing on positioning errors of Cody Sun and Pobelter. But they presented him with the opportunity to make these amazing plays, and he did. And I think that is really cool to see the evolution from Biofrost. As series MVP, I thought he totally deserved it. And when you look at him here in this finals versus, the first time he was in finals or, with double lift. There were some pretty egregious errors. They talk about the Tom Kench game, and on TSM Legends, you could actually see them talking about it, and it felt like
wow, Frost, don't be tilted.
Yeah,
he's like, it's hard.
Yeah, he's like, I can't play it again. Do you want to play Tom? No. It's one of those situations where you can see the development of these players, and I think that is really exciting, and that is very a positive thing to see for TSM and for their fans.
Yeah, I agree that it's a matter of being clutch versus choking, right? Because I think both happened.
Yeah.
And in the cast, we get caught up in the moment, right? Like it's the TSM comeback. It's amazing, and you want to give credit where it's due. But in retrospect, on shows like this, that was a pretty big choke.
Yeah.
Like Immortals really messed up big time, and they are kicking themselves because they were in a position to win that series.
Totally.
Right? Aside from the choking moments, they were executing better than TSM in a lot of aspects. The jungle support synergy, the fact they were able to consistently get leads, like the number of turrets they were taking down early. I wonder how that will affect them going into Worlds, because like it stings now that they had that terrible failure essentially on a big stage, but as far as Worlds is concerned, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
They're in
sure.
exactly the same position as TSM in Pool 2 of the Worlds group draw.
And I mean, the question just then becomes, how do you deal with this? How do you learn from this, right? Is it something that then they're playing on the world stage and it's an even bigger stage and that's always in the back of your head? Oh God, we're going to blow the lead. We did it last time.
Yeah.
Or is it something that you can go back, you can learn from it, and you can say, hey, next time we're in this situation, take a step back, someone call it out, let's slow play this. We've got, calm down and actually play the game out the way that you would normally want to play it. Because in those situations, if you can learn from that, that could get you extra wins, right? Because people talk about, oh, it's better to lose early. It's better to lose now because you can learn from it.
It is, because it means you didn't lose later yet.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see how they perform. But I also do think that, there are some other deficiencies in their play. I thought their team fighting sometimes wasn't really that great. I think that they are pretty heavily reliant on the early game. And when you go to the highest levels, when you go to Worlds, there's so many ridiculously talented players individually that sometimes the early game, in my opinion, is one of the hardest places to actually exploit those teams.
I don't like. It's weird thinking about that, like the idea, because I know this is something that like Weldon brought up with like G2 and TSM, whatever, where he's like, it's impossible at Worlds to get a big enough gold lead to win early game, so no one should practice early game. It's like,
I don't agree with that. I'm not saying that.
I'm not quoting him properly, but like that was just the argument that I kind of got.
That is an argument people have taken in the past.
Right.
I think he was. I watched some of the longer form videos that Weldon did, and he was basically saying like, we've done the early game thing, and the difference between a 1,000 gold lead and a 3,000 gold lead isn't enough to warrant us putting more time into that than the 20 to 40 minutes. But like, continue.
Okay, so the more fair argument then is diminishing returns and learning early game. But I do think you can still have like an early game focused team on the world stage.
Certainly.
And do very well. Like maybe you don't be, maybe you're not in that Longzhou SKT final, but at the same time, like you can be an early game focused team, just like you can be a Huni Reignover top focused team like Fnatic was and make top 4. And like that's still better than almost anyone ever does. So
I really agree that you can have success with an early game focus, but where I think it can be problematic is if you have significant deficiencies in your mid and late game. It only takes one mistake in the later stages of the game to erase all of the work from all of these great plays that you've made consistently throughout the early game, right?
Sure.
And there are cases where that is not true, where you've amassed an enormous lead. But oftentimes, if you're talking about the 3K gold lead, you screw up that 30-minute fight, they get Baron off of
And
it.
that's 8K.
Yeah. Then it's like, oh God, not only did we not capitalize on this, we're now massively behind because of one mistake. So I think that they do have a chance though to be competitive at Worlds, and I'm actually really excited to see how they can perform. But it may be a case where we're kind of seeing the learning phase for one of these teams, because you have to remember a lot of these players are newer to kind of this scene or to that stage, I guess I should say, or have not been there in a long time.
Yeah. Speaking of early game focused teams that choke and aren't going to Worlds, you want to talk about KT?
Sure.
Because they're not going to Worlds.
that's true.
The KT Game 3, to jump ahead in the series, that just reminded me so much of Immortals Game 3. So
quick shot, KT lost to Samsung in the
3-0
qualifier. And the fact that it is a giant choke job for KT is they had 4 opportunities going into a series where they could clinch Worlds.
So essentially it was, if they beat SKT in the last game of the regular season, then they would have qualified for Worlds.
Yep.
If they beat SKT in the playoffs, they would have qualified for Worlds. If SKT beat Longzhu in the finals, I believe they would have qualified for Worlds.
Yep.
And then finally, if they beat Samsung in the end of the Gauntlet,
qualifier.
they would have qualified for Worlds. So they literally had 4 chances. They just needed to win, like have one of those things go their way within the span of what, 2-3 weeks?
It was about a month, maybe.
Yeah.
And then even in the SKT series, they had 3 games to win because they were up 2-0, and they choked in all 3 of those as well. So, like, I mean, they must have all just asphyxiated to death at this point. They choked so much.
The final game of this series, though, reminded me a lot of Game 4 of Immortals versus TSM. And I think it was even more crazy, though, because KT had such an enormous lead, and Samsung holds on for, it felt like 30 minutes of just defending their base with inhibitors down, and it eventually comes back and wins this game. But it's got to be so disappointing for KT because Game 3, they were extremely dominant. Game 1, they certainly had a lot of chances to actually win. Game 2, they got slammed. But I mean, this is another time where you're looking at this team that had so many opportunities. It's flashback to last year. And for me, I wonder if they're even going to be together, like going forward. Like, I really am expecting this team to just scatter at this point. You know, where do these guys go? Does Mata retire? Does Smeb go, you know, and just try to cash in China or even North America? Or does he try to go to SKT? You know, what happens to this team?
Yeah, I can't imagine them staying together.
Me either.
But just as like a looking back on this KT team, it is easy to say, hey, this is why super teams don't work. Right? Because KT is a super team.
Yep.
But this was a super team that worked 95% of the time until they needed to win the final game. You look at the KDA rankings in LCK, because they always show that before games. That's how they like rank players. They have the #1 KDA player in 4 of the 5 positions in the league. They were smashing kids all throughout the LCK regular season. They were in the final in the spring. They were basically the exact same win-loss record as Longzhu in the summer. They won more games than anyone else in Korea in the regular season across 2017 and did it in a flashy fashion. But yes, they couldn't come together in the end. Like, it makes me really sad because I love this team and I loved the way they play.
Yeah.
And because they failed, it's more evidence that this style and this way of making teams doesn't work in the clutch.
It's weird though, because like at the same time, so I'm thinking about like all the pieces that come in, because what is it? 2 of them are already world champions, right? Mata and Pawn. Am I wrong? Like one
yes,
with
Mata
Samsung,
and Pawn
right?
won in 2014 with Samsung.
Right. So you have people on the roster who clearly know how to like win an entire season, right? Even if they I mean, famously they actually lost their LCK playoff run, but still made Worlds and then made that happen. That was kind of fun for Samsung White. But it's like they clearly have the people who know how to go long, right? And like Deft won a couple of LCK splits as well on Blue. So like these guys know what they're doing, Smeb, you know, etc. So these guys know what they're doing. It's weird to me like hearing like, oh, I don't see how they couldn't break up, because like I feel like you're never going to be on a team this good again. Or like, you know, if you go to China, like, I mean, sorry, but the top 4 teams in LCK are better than every team in China.
But if you feel like you can join SKT or something, do you not want to take the easy road out? Or for Mata, who, you know, has kind of been struggling more since he won his world championship. You know, he went to China, it didn't work there. He comes back here, try to make super team, beat SKT. That doesn't work out either. You know, some of these players have been around for a long time, and it's not necessarily about, you know, what is the best career option. If you were like, I quit, if you're done, I give up, right? Yeah. Then maybe you just want to cash out, or maybe you're just plain done. Sure. And I do think it's a good point to bring up the fact that these guys have had international success. Even, you know, Smeb, he was in the semifinals, obviously, you know, very close series against SKT at Worlds. It's not like these guys have never done anything. But I will also say that just because you have had success in the past does not mean you still have the same mindset to achieve it. And it's on different teams. And I think that the atmosphere in one team to another can be massively different, and that can really give you confidence versus kind of taking it away. And I think that it just felt to me like there was a mental block with this team as far as when you get to that stage, right? It just seemed too weird to me to see them fail that many times, because they did so well in regular seasons, right? So it's either you're choking in playoffs, or people are not preparing for you in regular season, and your style is essentially a gimmick, right? And I did not feel that they were playing a gimmicky style. I didn't feel like it's like, oh, well, they got to playoffs and everyone pick-manned, you know, prep for them and just smashed them because their style is a gimmick. It never felt like that to me, so it felt like they had a mental block, or they're choking, or whatever you want to call it.
It's fair.
Do you think they're going to stay together, Freak?
I think they could.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Like, I think it's reasonable to do so, to say, hey, let's try again. Look, we got 4th place. That sucks. But again, the thoughts are like, look, if you want to just cash out or quit, like, that's fine. People can have that idea, right? Doublelift did that at the beginning of the year and said, never mind, I want to compete. And, maybe that happens. Or maybe Mata's like, I'm going to take my retirement and chill out, right?
Or
Smeb goes to
hasn't
China,
won, right?
gets a couple $1 million and goes, that's fine with me. Like, I'm never going to win Worlds on a Chinese team because that's going to be really hard. Maybe that happens. And I'm not going to blame someone for doing that. You live your life how you want to, of course. But if I think the goal of these players is, hey, let me go at least top 4 at Worlds, or let me win, an LCK split, this is maybe their best spot outside of replacing Untara and SKT.
The goal was, I think, to win Worlds.
Yeah.
Right? And the fact that they're not even there is like, it's going to make them reevaluate a lot.
Fair.
Because I think if this team was Samsung and they finished 4th, then I think they're going to stay together. Okay. Right? But this has already been, like, this is a group of players, aside from Smeb, who have already done the, like, chase the money. And for Deft and Mata, they were actually on good teams.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
They had tons of success over in China. So I think they came together, took pay cuts, all got onto KT, and we're like, we're going to make this up because we're going to win Worlds, and that prize pool is huge. Yeah. Right? And then when they fail short, they're like, man. But either way, because they're such superstar players, I'm just really excited for what happens, because if they stay together, that's actually an awesome story, right? Like, we still think we can do it. They, as you mentioned, have reasons to believe they can do it as long as they can get past their mental block. But if they fall apart, like, China's been less import heavy within the last year because people going back to Korea.
NA, baby.
They can still
Let's
there.
go.
NA has franchising coming in, right? Maybe we get to see.
We got Echo Fox Deft, and we got
There we go.
TSM Smeb, and all kinds of people.
You got to drop Frog at that point. But,
either way, I'm excited to see what happened, and I'm sorry.
I think it's a viable, right? I think all those are viable options, and it really depends on their personality. Because again, if you want to win Worlds as a player, I think you stay on an all-Korean team in Korea.
Yeah. I mean,
and
I
that's
think
up
you're
to
right.
their choices.
If they're younger players, you feel like, maybe we're in it for the long haul, we're developing, right? But like Jet said, you come together to win a championship with all these people who are supposed to already be on that level. You want success now. And that's one of the downfalls, I think, of those teams. And I also think that super teams, oftentimes, there's a lot of ego involved because all these guys have been the star on their team, and now you're just a star. And when it goes wrong, it can be very hard to then, I think, sometimes accept blame for those sorts of things when it was always someone else's fault, right? When you were the best guy on your team, people don't really blame that person as often internally.
Yep. So Samsung wins. Samsung, Longju, SKT going for Korea.
Yep.
That means SKT and Samsung are in Pool 2. Longju was Pool 1. China also has all their seeds. I want to talk about those pretty quickly. I think they're sending the 3 best teams or the most exciting teams. I'm really glad WE got to go. One interesting thing about the playoffs is all the way from semifinals to finals through like the regional qualifier, everything was going 5 games.
Yeah.
So incredibly close and competitive. RNG got reverse swept in the finals by EDG. EDG wasn't the best team throughout the regular season. That was actually RNG. But WE was arguably the best team throughout the year because they won the spring split and were pretty dominant in summer until losing early on in the playoffs. So I'm glad they pulled it out in a 5-game series against them. I think China's sending the 3 best teams.
Yeah, I mean, Frost Curran, I know, was pretty outspoken about the fact that she thinks WE is just the best team in China, period, right now, right? And even despite their loss in playoffs, she still thinks that's actually just the best team. So it will be very interesting when you have a team like that. Our expectations still that high, and how will they actually perform at Worlds? It becomes very exciting because, this is a team that did perform. Like you said, they won spring split. They have been a very good team. So China honestly might have some really good representatives. Like, this is not one of those situations where I think you're coming in and looking at, okay, well, maybe it's 1 or 2 teams that compete, and third is maybe kind of not right there yet.
Yeah, a couple thoughts for me. One, I'm actually kind of sad IG's not going. Like, okay, the 3 of us can probably be going, sure, but like Rookie is so much fun to watch play League of Legends.
Rookie
like,
was insane in their series, even though they lost.
Rookie's definitely like one of my favorite players, right? He's willing to pull out the Yasuo. He's super exciting. Like, there was like sweet Echo Yasuo clips from like last year and stuff. Like, this player is so awesome. Like, I wish I could have him at Worlds. Too bad that he can't go, but this guy is really incredible.
Yeah. Also, IG had a top laner called The Shy, who actually was replacing Duke in the top lane for IG towards the end of the year. They had
looking really good.
Yeah, and Duke is really good.
Yeah.
Like, Duke was arguably the best top laner during the regular season in the LPL, and The Shy was doing better than him, a former Riven one trick on the Korean ladder. So IG had a lot of highlight plays.
Yeah, I mean, in their series where they lost, it was it was a 5-game series, right? So this was another really close one. And Rookie did actually stand out a lot to me. You know, his Lucian game, he almost had a pentakill. Like he gets a quadra-kill, dies getting the penta. But I mean, his Corki game was super good. Like he was, like you said, playing a lot of champions and playing them exceptionally well.
Yeah.
So it does bode well for the strength of China when you have a super competitive series for the 3rd spot, and you're like, oh, both these teams look pretty good.
Yeah.
But you always kind of have to temper those expectations, and it's one of those situations where, are you blinded by how they look against each other? You know, are there weaknesses that we are not seeing? Because this is something that Rift Rivals really made me reconsider. And I mean, you laugh, but it's true, right? You go into that and you're like, damn, these European teams, they're sick. They look so good against each other. You know, they're going to be really strong. They should be favored.
Cannon out and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
Oh, wow, this is so good. You just can't stop the cannon. No one could beat it, right? Well, maybe someone else can. Maybe someone else can make this stuff look silly, because while I do think that China is no longer the just fight, haha. All they do is kill each other. They don't macro.
Right.
There still are games that you're like, what is happening? It's 3 minutes. There's 10 people in the bottom lane.
Yeah.
It's 4 minutes. There's 10 people in the mid lane. Like there's 17 kills. We're 6 minutes in. What's going on?
It's like Uzi and MLXG are in the bottom lane from minute 3 to minute 9.
Yeah.
And you're like, where is his jungle? Why is he not clearing his jungle? No, we need pressure in the bottom lane. First turn is all that matters.
And it's crazy, and they make it look good because I think there's so many mechanically talented players.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes the strategy itself is at fault. It's not the play, right? It's not that, oh well, he moved the wrong way or didn't kite well enough.
There.
You just shouldn't have been there.
Yeah,
Exactly. So that's always my question, I think, with some of the Chinese teams going into Worlds is, are you gonna get to Worlds and be like, oop, well, it just shouldn't have been there?
Yeah. One tweak to this is, aside from Korea, every region's, like former major region's 3rd seed team is in the play-in, which means they're a pool 3 team. So we're in a world now where
WE is a pool 3 team.
Fnatic or H2K or whatever, definitely WE. And then whoever wins between CLG, C9 and Dig, like those are
and FlyQuest,
and FlyQuest
and Hong Kong Attitude, I think, right?
They're in the play-in as well. Yeah. But all those teams are now theoretically in like this pool 3 world of Worlds, and it's going to make groups so weird. Like we're talking about, China's got pretty good showing at Worlds this year, but I can't remember a year where every region had so much turmoil at the top.
Yeah.
Right? SKT, Longzhu, Samsung, KT, like there was no clear dominant victor in that bunch. And it's like 3 teams. You know what? On any given day, I think any of these teams go into best of 5. Same with China. Mostly the same with NA, even though I think TSM and Immortals are going to be doing that trade thing. And the fact that G2 won in Europe is a dynasty builder, but they were losing all the time during the regular season. So the amount of upheaval and like inter-region competitiveness, I think, has been the highest it's been, and I'm really curious how that manifests at Worlds.
It also makes play-ins really exciting for me because when you're going to MSI and there's like 1 or 2 teams, but they're a #1 team from their region, you're like, well, they're probably not going to lose to the wildcard teams. They're probably all going to get in. But like with Worlds, when there's 5, 6 of these 3rd seeds from major regions, and they're going up against some of the best teams from the smaller emerging regions, or whatever you want to call them, there's a good chance that at least some of them get knocked out just because they didn't show up on the day.
I agree. There's 2 points that are really interesting to me. So one is we get to see teams like WE play really soon, right? Those squads are playing in play-in, so they, Worlds, like for those. A lot of people don't like watching play-ins because they don't care about the teams. Yeah, it's like really soon. Because a lot of people, like general viewers, like don't really care about playing because I don't want to watch Brazil play Turkey. Like it doesn't matter to me. They're just gonna get stomped through group seeds anyway. Whatever, right? I'm not gonna go watch INTZ
You could be watching C9,
but now you can watch like C9 and WE or whoever else goes, and Fnatic. And it's like, oh, those guys are playing. Okay, well now you tune in and you watch more of Worlds, which I think is definitely exciting. And then the other one is it's like, okay, we've got to see Gigabyte Marines versus WE, and like, sorry, those are almost never going to be close matches. But now you have like Team 1 out of Brazil facing Hong Kong Attitude, and it's like, well, now you get to stop making fun of air quotes wildcard teams because, okay, does Brazil #1 beat LMS #3? Okay, maybe, right? Like this is now a much more compelling fight. Like, yeah, maybe they get bashed by Flash Wolves, but they're not playing Flash Wolves.
And I mean, even when CLG was doing well internationally, they still were losing wildcards every single time.
Yeah,
they can't go into that tournament.
They're gonna lose it.
This is not unrealistic to think. Well, no matter who gets in, whether it's them or Dig or C9, these are not the perfectly polished teams, or FlyQuest. Though, let's be honest.
But
Come on.
I know.
FlyQuest looked like
They're not making
crap.
it. No, they're not making
This split. And
Said that.
I will wear a body
man.
pillow, Jat. I will wear a body pillow of
C9 with
FlyQuest.
Haya looks so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. So it's even last split where they got their championship points. The second half of spring split, they were losing almost all their games. Summer split, they're losing almost all of their games. They were winning to relegation. If they do it, that would be incredible. But I feel like, I mean, they have to win 3 best-of-5s as a team that was almost relegated against playoff teams in a row.
CLG, then C9 in a row.
Let's just jump into that right now. Like normally we do solo queue and meta stuff, but we're so worlds right now. Let's go right into regional qualifiers and we can do solo queue after. Like the NA Gauntlet preview coming up. We have FlyQuest and Dig. That's the first matchup. Winner plays CLG. Winner plays C9.
Yeah.
Who are your favorites, right?
I mean, it gets really hard because so CLG actually in week 9 they beat Dignitas in the 3rd place match. They smashed Dignitas. So even though Dignitas was favored coming into that matchup, you're kind of thinking, okay, well that's probably pretty one-sided. You're certainly favoring whoever plays FlyQuest. So Dignitas, you're expecting to get to CLG. And then I'm like, well, really, like I should be favoring CLG based on performances at this point, but I would not be surprised to see Dignitas win. And then Dignitas knocked C9 out of playoffs, so that could probably go either way, even though C9 was beating them in the regular season. So this just seems like such a coin flip to me between those 3 teams. I would not be surprised if any of the 3 teams win. I mean, C9 seems ultra confident, at least externally, like on social media and whatnot. Anytime you see, Smoothie or any of these guys talking about it, they're like, I guarantee we are going to be at Worlds.
So did Darshan.
So did CLG, though, yeah.
And that's the cool thing about the regional qualifier here is because the 3 teams are pretty close, and on the day, a lot of different things could happen. But as analysts, it is our duty to make arguments for who you think is going to win.
Sure.
And C9 is in this really unique position because they lost in the quarterfinals a month ago. And now they're going to be waiting to play 1 best-of-5. And it really depends how good your scrim culture is, whether or not that is a benefit or a detriment. Right? Some teams are stage teams, some teams are scrim teams, and some of them make the transition between stage and scrims better. I think C9 makes that transition quite well. Because of how experienced their players are, because 4/5 of these guys were in Worlds last year, because 4/5 of these guys won the regional qualifier last year. I think knowing how to prep for this tournament and this best-of-5 is already in their favor. So you have all these other things that are really close and competitive between the teams, like the fact that Dignitas beat C9 in a really competitive series, the fact that CLG then beat Dig. Like, they've been taking games off each other and playing that, like, who beat who is actually a circular argument at this point, and anyone could actually win. So because of the amount of time C9 has had to sit back and wait, I give them the edge.
So you want to go? Okay, yeah. So there's my front runners are very, very strongly both Chronologic Gaming and Cloud9, and I'm still deciding which one it is. So C9, to their credit, probably got very, very good scrims. I think both TSM and Immortals would be jumping at getting them scrims for the postseason, and up until 2-3 days ago, those were still practicing for matches. So I think C9 got to practice against the best teams in NA for, as you're saying, like 2-3 weeks straight. Maybe it's a bit harder this week. Maybe TSM's taking time off and they'll fly to Korea once 7-18 hits.
They are taking a couple days, I believe.
Right. Okay. So maybe C9 gets no scrims now, or they play FlyQuest or Dig or something to like prep them for the CLG match or whatever. And as you were saying before, Jat, I think C9's a strong team and they practice well. CLG though, like, if I'm to believe CLG is a great team and that the 3-0 over Dig was deserved, it's because Omar God got better. He was KDA leader of their series in the 3-0. He looked very good. I mean, CLG's level 1s were super sick. They kept first blooding Shrimp. So that's either Shrimp super choking, which is actually partially true. So it's like, did Dig tank really hard? And that's why CLG and thus Omar God looked good, because Shrimp got first blooded like almost every single game before Minion spawned. Or has Omar God finally gotten good? Because since he's been the dedicated starter, they played like 4 best-of-3s or something, but then like 3 or 4 best-of-5s now, right? Like, they've given him a lot of extra matches to play, and he's going to get 1 against Dig, he's going to get 1 against C9, and like, this guy gets a lot of prep now, and he gets to keep improving as a dedicated starter over Dardoch that they dropped a while ago. Like, if he keeps going up and up, then he's actually a good jungler, and now CLG is actually a good team, because that was the only argument against him, is that CLG was the 3rd place team, right? Like, they got 3rd in regular season, they were above C9 and above Dig in all these squads, but that was the Dardoch CLG, so how much has the gap closed between Omar God and him? And if he's up to Dardoch level, or at least, winning as much as him, then it's still a third place team and they should win.
And I even think that it's like, if you're talking about the Dardoch CLG, Dardoch wasn't even really the reason that they were winning.
Not really, no.
Right? So I feel like this is a team with a performing jungler that could have been challenging for the
jungler.
finals, right?
Yeah.
That could have been challenging TSM to win the championship. And that's why, I mean, C9, I think, is the odds-on favorite. They're starting in the last match, right? That's going to give them already a boost. There's a chance CLG doesn't even make it to that, and a very real chance. But gun to my head, if I have to make a prediction, I would say CLG, simply because I am bought in a little bit to the fact that Omar God has improved. I don't think that Omar God is now the superstar, but I do think that he has been playing incredible. I think that Darshan has been playing very, very well. Yeah. And I think that the fact that Aframu and Stixxay showed up in their playoff series meant a lot, because that had been a deficiency for them for, the Envy series as well as the Immortal series. They were getting slammed every single game. So the fact that they showed up against Dig was promising. And while I do think that, you're talking about Shrimp, Contracts is not Shrimp. I actually think that Contracts was probably, the second best performing jungler in the regular season, and I think that they play very well around mid lane. So there are differences, right? Maybe he gets held down because Contracts and Jensen maybe play that duo better, right?
They should.
But, yeah, you would expect, right? But I do think that CLG, their 4 members, excluding Omar God, I think have a lot of potential to be successful at the highest level with this roster. So if Omar God shows up, I think they can make it through the Gauntlet.
Yeah, and I think Huhi has been the undisputed best player on that team.
Yeah.
Which has been pretty awesome. The thing that tilts me against CLG a little bit, since I already gave my C9 spiel, is how good they were level 1 in the third place match, I think overinflates their performance. Because level 1 kills, while it is good that they had good prep and it shows good coaching, are not reliable.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to say that's not going to happen against C9 unless something really crazy happens. Yeah. So, yes.
And it probably won't happen again against Dig as well.
Exactly. They performed with the momentum in the third place match, and I think Dig got some really big stage jitters, and CLG was much cooler and calmer under pressure with their experience and their sports psychologist and stuff.
Sure.
I don't think that's going to happen again.
I mean, you could just play line of scrimmage, and that shouldn't happen, right?
For the most part, yeah.
You just play a
don't bid for reward without
point
seeing them.
line. And you essentially played as defensive as you can.
Yep.
You're not going to have those because CLG had very good planning and Dig played level 1s aggressively, which is what you're kind of alluding to. It's essentially the perfect storm. The CLG did get massively ahead at the start of all those games, but it was also encouraging for me to see the fact that CLG was willing to cater some of these strategies around Omar God. That's one thing that said, hey, they actually have some confidence in this guy. I look back to the Envy series, their quarterfinals match, when they picked Zach, got absolutely slammed level 1 every time they picked Zach. They were convinced that this was, top priority jungler. They actually abandoned it mid-series because, we can't do anything against this. Their bot lane's invading. We're just getting slammed. Yep. They went back to the Zach. They played more heavily around it, defending him, and had the confidence that he would then perform on that. So that alone gave me some confidence that they had, broke down what they thought was the reasons for that happening, and that they felt that they could actually counteract it or deal with it. And so the fact that they had made those marked improvements in what I thought were some of their biggest deficiencies gave me some confidence that, hey, this was not just a fluke. They, despite Dignitas playing poorly, CLG has also fixed some shit.
Yeah.
CLG, C9.
I think I'm going to lead C9.
All right. 2-1.
Just argued CLG for 5 minutes.
I was saying if Omar God is this good, and then we started talking about the Dignitas
prediction.
Screw up level 1s, and I was like, yeah, I said it's one of the two, and I eventually lean C9.
Yeah, I guess that means FlyQuest wins.
Yep, that's the one. Yeah. Or Dig. I mean, Dig still can, right? We
I know, right?
Kind of,
but they shouldn't be counted out because
they're very good.
They've been so good on the LCS stage, and that's where they're playing. Regional qualifiers is here in the studio. It's their comfort zone for the most part.
I don't even think there's an audience for those games.
The Friday one didn't sell tickets. Saturday and Sunday did.
Okay.
So there will be an audience on Saturday and Sunday.
Cool.
You guys probably haven't had that much time to play, but Freak, you haven't been on in a while.
Yeah.
How is solo queue going?
I have been, as mostly an attempt, spamming Relic Shield bot laners. Whether you have,
I think it's good.
As a Sivir or Tristana, not like, oh, I'm Relic Shield Blitzcrank. It's like, whether it's a Janna or a Soraka or a Blitzcrank or whatever on my team, I will spam Relic Shield.
Yep.
So there's
an opportunity to argue for it.
Yeah. So
have people called you bad for doing it?
No, I haven't gotten flamed for it. I've said like, oh, we had Relic Shield. Is this the new meta? And I'm like, maybe. So I haven't gotten flamed, which is nice. So that's, credit to solo queue. In the short term, it is more sustained than any of the other options. Because you have 3 potions, it is more health than a Doran Shield gives you. if you're facing Zyra Caitlyn, it eventually gets outstripped by Doran Shield's insane regen. So if it's a really hard laning phase, Relic Shield will tank you. It doesn't give you as many like pure stats. Like Doran's Blade gives you 3 lifesteal and 7
Last
AD.
hitting is also harder.
Yeah, and you can miss last hits. So like the gold per 10 that you just get innately doesn't make up for the loss of stats and the loss of last hitting. But it gives free gold to your support, right? And that's the choice you're making. I am weaker, but my support has more gold, and they're getting like 5 gold per 10 out of the on hit. Like if you're getting exactly a melee minion every every 40 seconds, it's worth like roughly 5 gold per 10, which is a lot of income.
And when you're rushing coin, when you're actually
if I have an Ardent Sensor Rusher
very early, you're rushing towards that.
Right.
People are even going for runes. They're going gold per 5 runes, right?
Yep.
So if you are doing it that heavily and you're playing around that power, I think then it makes quite a bit of sense, right? Because then it's about, all right, well, maybe we're a little bit weaker now, but my Janna is going to have the Ardent Sensor 2 minutes before their Lulu or something, and then we'll fight and we'll just be stronger.
Do you only do it with range supports, or would you do it with an
So I've tried with all of it, and just discovering how painful like the laning phase is. Just to your really quick your point about runes, right? If you're running full seals and Quince gold generation, that's the same gold that I'm giving you by going Relic Shield. So if I go Relic Shield, you get to run seals and Quince that are real runes.
Or
so, like,
just double up.
Well, or double up, right? But like if you're in a world where the support wants another 5 gold per 10, they can either run 15 ability power and 72 health, or I can run Relic Shield, or I get a Doran's Blade and you have crappy runes, right? And it's the same income either way, and the ones where they get real runes is probably the better world. Also, if you upgrade Relic Shield to Targon's Brace, it's like 500 gold for like 500 effective health, because like 100 on the item and like 350 on the shield itself. So
once you have gained
when you get the
gold,
quest, right? When you get the quest, which is not hard, it's like 25 minutes in, eventually you do it. So there's a lot of meat here that actually does work out. But again, it's a pretty weak laning phase. You can miss last hits. You miss out on trading power, period, right? You and I've like lost a kill because of it. So where I stand right now is I think if you have an item spiking support, like if you want to get your Zyra off the ground because you have no mages and like she needs a Liandry's, or you're running with an Ardent Sensor Soraka or whatever, probably worth it. Probably not worth running otherwise.
Cool.
Unless the lane is so free you're not going to get a kill and you're not going to die, like it's just a farm lane, then sure, free gold.
And then the only question I would have is, if you're not an AD carry main, is it worth it because you want to help the people that are in their main role?
Oh, I see.
Or do you have to be good to play around it? Because last hitting is harder, you have to understand your strengths. Like, should this be a thing that only good AD carries do, or should autofilled AD carries do it?
I think you probably only do it if you're good, because it's if your lane is hard, it's weaker than Doran's Shield, and if your lane is easy, like, and if you're getting under turret, you can't last hit as well.
I mean,
and if you're trying to kill
cannon because of the lost AD,
right?
Or
It's
something,
completely like
it
ruins you
real bad.
So yeah, I think my results is it's a situational buy when it's worth power spiking your support. And I think that's the only reason you should buy it. That's where I'm at right now. I'm going to keep playing it some more, but it seems like you do lose a fair bit.
Cool. I'm currently debating whether or not to stick with Cinderhulk junglers or start experimenting with the other jungle items, because Cinderhulk's getting hit again in 718, which is going to drop next week. And efficiency-wise, it's like the Bomby Cinder is nice for the early clear, but after the item's fully completed, I actually feel like the Runic Echoes and the Warrior are kind of overtaking it on stuff like Jarvan and Amumu, which are some of my main champs.
Yeah, I actually looked at some of the data before we went into World Finals.
NA Finals, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, NA Finals. Also, technically still correct, though. It is before World Finals. But yeah, so looking at Jarvan as my test case, across all 3 jungle items, Warrior Enchant has like a 1 to 0.5% win rate higher than Cinderhulk. And this is solo queue, right? It's a different game from Pro Play. But also it's winning across all the smites.
I will also say, so while it is interesting, and I love looking at the stats too.
They might buy because of snowballing.
Exactly. There's lots of situations where if I was playing a tanky jungler, I will build more aggressively because I'm winning, right? Yeah. It's like I'm playing a Rek'Sai. It's like, wow, well, Black Cleaver has a higher win rate than your Dead Man's Play second. Why don't you just always go that? Well, it's because I get a Black Cleaver when I'm 3-0, and I'm just saying, well, I'm just going to kill everyone now, right? And that's a similar thing to Jarvan. If I go out and I get first blood, maybe I just want to actually get a couple long swords and say, well, I'm just going to go invade them and buy challenging smite, et cetera, and try to win.
But what's interesting to me is like it's consistent across all the smites. Like if you're snowballing, do you really go green smite? Like a lot of the time, right? It's like you might just go red and dual
probably
people.
Shouldn't.
Yeah,
but I will say that
unfortunately, I always go green smite, man.
See, a lot of people just do
Always
the
green.
smite that they do, right?
Fair.
And For me, I pretty much will just always go challenging because I just like playing with it. I just think it's more fun.
Yeah.
If I ever want to do invading, which I like playing a very invade heavy playstyle, no matter what champion I play.
And green smite's better for invading because deep wards.
You can get
Yeah,
wards
but
and make
see,
it
I
safe.
just kill them.
You red smite them and
They
fight.
see me on their red,
If you're
but
far
I
enough
have,
ahead,
but
you
I
kill
have
them
a,
anyway.
I have a challenging smite,
Yeah.
so they
I
can't
know.
fight me.
I know. I actually go challenging smite on really random stuff if I'm against like a Yi. It's like, well, I know if I'm ever going to win a duel against this guy, I have to match.
I need to smite him.
That's about it.
Okay.
Anything you've been doing, Isaac? Top lane?
I mean, not too much because this last week I actually stayed a little bit longer in Boston to hang out with my cousin and whatnot. So I haven't actually played. I'm trying to decide.
Are you going to play solo queue like we recommend?
Yeah, I'm trying to decide how much I want to play solo queues because
Like
I played a lot of
instead of normals.
Yeah, exactly. Like I play a lot of Summer's Rift, but it's a lot of normals, and I also played a lot of flex because of Riot Rumble. I was playing with my team, and I find that so much more fun. But I will probably at least try to get on all my accounts. You know, just
Into
make
Diamond
sure
or something?
everything. Yeah, because I have the one in it, and then I've Diamond 3 and other things.
Yeah.
But I want to get all my accounts at least Diamond and solo queue. So I'll probably play some more before Worlds because. I'm not actually going to be casting 4 play-ins. So we have 1 week off and then we have play-ins. Obviously, I'll have to watch that. But
That's 2
I
weeks
essentially have 3 weeks basically before I have to go to China where I could probably play a lot. And I probably will play a lot just to be in the League of Legends mode.
Sure.
I want to grind a bit. I feel like my casting actually gets so much better when I'm thinking about the game from a solo queue perspective. Just the decisions junglers have to make. And like, I'm not in Master Challenger level, but I'm in like mid diamond when I'm playing well. So at least now after the wrist surgery and stuff. And it actually helps a lot with following the decision making in game.
Yeah, I've noticed the same, especially like for me as a play caster, it's like I will just lose like scope of fights when I'm not like it's not really obvious to me like what's going on. So it helps me a ton as well. And I was playing a lot heading into playoffs, so that helped me, I think.
I just also find that the micro things, like you know a lot more little interactions and things like that. So I can watch all kinds of pro games, never play the game again, and I can probably still cast very well as far as the macro level and knowing builds and knowing these sorts of things. But until you have seen it in pro, you don't necessarily know what's happening. Whereas if you're playing a lot of solo queue, oftentimes you see these things in solo queue before it goes into pro, which is kind of fun to know these little interactions, or you see this locked in and you're like, hey, I don't know if this is exactly what he's doing, but I saw it in solo queue. This is what they did. This is the idea behind it. And that kind of thing is really fun to be able to do. And plus, I just enjoy the game. And if I'm playing the game a lot and I'm enjoying it, I enjoy my job a lot more.
Yeah, of course.
So.
Jungle Maokai was the biggest example of that because I played like 30 or 40 Jungle Maokai games. And then every time I watched a pro start with the wrong sapling strat, I was like, he's doing it wrong.
Doing it wrong.
I can say this confidently.
Yeah.
Whereas if I hadn't played Maokai, I wouldn't know the sapling setups in the jungle.
One thing I was really excited about, I got to see Essence Reaver Kog'Maw
Yeah.
A
in playoff. I was
lot
so
of people
happy.
have done it now.
I know, it's so
And then
good.
Cody's son was like, I just randomly did it. You're like, wow,
I
he's
don't know.
so smart. He's brilliant. He did the math. He figured it out. And he's like,
Well-
I clicked the blue one because I like the color.
But I mean, and some of the feelers I've had conversations with though. Like I tweeted out about it with Tristana, and I remember Apollo messaged me. He's like, "Hey, what about on Kog'Maw?" I'm like, "Yeah, it makes sense." I did math and I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like during 1W, obviously it's less than Infinity Edge, but yeah, no, it's really good if you want the cooldown. And then like it's becoming more popular, and it's like,
You have to play around your W. It makes so much sense.
right,
Yep. All right. Time to move on to Twitter questions.
great.
Jeremy Thomas or Instinct02 says, what would be the worst possible group of death at Worlds?
All right, so you take
So-
the first seed from Korea.
Yeah,
by
the
default.
way Worlds works this year, we have 4 Pool 1 teams, 8 Pool 2 teams. Those are all decided, and then the play-in decides the Pool 3 teams. But like the best Pool 3 teams we have potentially is
WE.
like WE, C9 COG, Fnatic, and Hong Kong Attitude probably
Or
as like
Team
your
1 or
favorites
something,
coming out of
like a
that.
Brazilian squad,
Yeah.
like maybe, right?
And I'd also say because NA lost their Pool 1 seed,
yeah,
TSM is a very strong Pool 2 seed, you would assume, right?
Yep.
So if you're looking at it, just off the top of my head, I haven't really thought about this too much. I mean, if you want to debate SKT at Worlds versus other things, so maybe this changes, but like a group of Longzhu, TSM, WE, that's already pretty scary,
and then you have
right?
another Pool 2 team.
And then you have another Pool 2 team, which
RNG.
couldn't be again
It
from
can't,
Korea,
it can't be another
right?
China or Korea team. So
Yep.
here's a question. We know the Pool 1 teams.
Yeah,
It's
so I actually know because I saw this question before. So
about
Flash Roll's my number 1. So you can put SKT as number 2, TSM at number 3, and WE at number 4. You can't get
Oh.
like that is the best fourth
That's
best
actually
team you
brutal.
could possibly
Holy
get.
moly.
WE in your Pool 2, SKT in your Pool 2, TSM's probably the best remaining Pool 2.
Yeah.
When you've already got WE
Right.
in there, and then Flash Roll's a great headliner.
Yeah. And then the only thing is how highly you would rank G2.
Yeah,
Because you could throw them in. They're going to
G2's
be
Pool 1.
they're
so
Pool
if
1
you think
team.
they're better than Flash Wolves,
right. If
Yeah.
you think they're better than Flash Wolves, which they did beat Flash Wolves at MSI,
Fair.
at least, even though Europe looked pretty bad in the summer split. So
You can
wonder
swap
about
that if you want. That's fine.
But I think those are the swaps. And what's funny about that is like being in Longzhu's group doesn't necessarily mean it's the hardest
It's
one.
almost the better draw for you.
Yeah.
Like you dodge Samsung
I
and
guess that's
SKT.
true.
You draw. You dodge. I mean, you might still pull like.
I mean, if you're
RNG.
saying that dodging Samsung and SKT is better than dodging Longzhu, right? Because
Sure, sure.
giving them the credit that they are the summer split champions and that
They're very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's actually potential for a lot of really hard groups. Because if you're looking at
But it also
the
then
group
blocks
you
you for
just
one.
you just actually put out,
Yeah.
or a Longzhu, TSM,
Royal.
WE, RNG, whatever, like these sorts of intermixings, like there's some damn
Alright.
hard groups.
Craft, this is just not a Twitter question,
Okay,
but I
sure.
like doing this in my
The
head.
easiest
Great.
group.
Craft the easiest group
Mhm.
for Pool 3 NA. So it's like
Okay,
the
so what
system is
group is
saying
CLG in?
because you're Pool 3,
Or C9.
yeah, it's going to be COD, C9,
So
Dick,
it's
FlyQuest.
Gigabyte Marines.
But now it's like get the easiest team from Pool 1 and the two easiest teams from Pool 2.
Well, G2 because NA greater than EU. Like that has to happen
But we
already.
don't have a pool one anyway, so
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So G2's pool 1,
Yeah.
Marines in pool 2, and then
your other
AHQ.
pools, too.
So
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Marines definitely.
Yeah.
I think you go Flash Wolves Pool 1
Okay.
because that
Like
means you can get
Misfits?
Misfits and
Okay.
Marines from Pool 2.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes
Then,
more sense.
then you make it out of groups.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and to be clear, Gigabyte
Well,
is
that's not
a pool 2.
congratulations.
Is
Yeah,
a
yeah,
pool 2
I wanna bring that up.
because of their success at MSI. So they're not going to be a pool 3 team.
Yep.
So you can actually end up with some crazy teams.
Yeah.
And I hope that everything is just kind of divided equally.
Sure.
Because I think it's more fun when you look at last year's Worlds was great, but
Mhm.
the right side of the bracket for the elimination stage which had C9, Samsung, ANX, and H2K
Mhm.
was clearly overall so much weaker than the other side with the
Sure.
top Chinese teams and ROX and SKT.
Yeah.
So you hope that teams are kind of divided in a way and end up in a way that it's the most
Mhm.
competitive possible
Yep.
bracket.
Yeah. May as well tease this now. The draw actually happens on the 12th of September at 6 a.m.
It's a
Pacific
Tuesday,
time.
right?
Yeah, it's a Tuesday next week, 6 a.m. Pacific.
And I now don't have to do it, so I'll be sleeping in.
Yeah, unless the caches
wake
keep
up-
dropping off, then you're going to have to fill in for someone.
I'll look up
That's
for
right.
it because actually, because unlike the MSI group draw, where, I remember tweeting about it, and then
Mhm.
people were like, "Why did I watch this? Like, why did you tell me that Turkey's playing against
Yeah.
CIS? Like, I don't care."
Yeah, the play-in draw happens first, and
yeah.
then the group draw happens with the Pool 3 teams yet to be
Because
decided.
you can't
It's
draw
like
them
the
until you
play-in.
know.
Yeah, but
who's
the
there.
the draw will pretty much be you'll know most of Worlds after
Yeah.
that thing.
Yeah.
Next Twitter question, David Peterly. Isaac, I know you're an expert on this
I think
name.
it's Peter Lee.
Yeah. For those of you who don't watch the show all the time, this guy has easily had the most Twitter questions of all
He's
of
in
us.
basically every week.
Great.
Back when we were just a podcast before video, he explained to Isaac exactly how to pronounce his name.
Just to me, even though it was clearly stated
Yeah.
to everyone.
And he has since forgotten, so
Yeah.
we always mess up his name. But thanks for all the Twitter questions.
Or we get it perfectly every time.
David Peterly.
Yeah, I like
do it
Peterly.
different every time. His question is, will we see Shyvana in competitive? Good versus tanks, good split push, fast jungle clear? If not, what would it take to see her in play?
I say no simply because I think that
Kiteable.
you're very kiteable, but it's also the biggest thing to me is right now there's been so much focus on early game jungling and the pressure. And
Mhm.
while Shyvana, once you get challenging smite or whatever, actually 1v1 dueling can be okay versus
Yeah,
some
sure.
things, so sure, but you can clear fast, you can do all these things, but if all your lanes have essentially lost or you can't win early 2v2s, which I don't really think Shyvana does very well, then I don't think a lot of people are actually willing to pick it.
So I will agree that we won't see her unless High turns into the jungle again and brings out Shyvana one more time, just like the 2015 or whatever.
Friday.
one. Yeah, maybe he brings it out. So I actually do think that she is theoretically competitively viable. Like you could play this champion, but it's a different kind of champion, right? No one's playing carry jungles right now. Like, okay, Lee Sin and like Elise is kind of there, but those are carries because they're like early game ganking junglers.
Yeah.
Shyvana's not that. So a team has to learn how to play around an entirely new type of style for the jungle role
Mhm.
when it's just easy to like, just play Gragas and Maokai in at least every game, or Zac. Okay, Zac's a bit different from Maokai, but he's kind of still the same champion. You just have a weaker early jungle, but you still hard CC people. And like, that takes a lot of time and effort that pro teams are generally not willing to put the time into. And that's fine because there's a lot more to learn than like learning a wildly different comp. Like it's probably
Mhm.
not worth your time.
And if you're
But-
going Cinderhulk Shyvana, you may as well just play another tank jungler.
No, I'd go Devour. I would go
have to
Devour and I would get like
Blood
a
Razor now.
Ruin King. Oh, sorry, you're right.
I did this
I
the
had the
other
same
month.
mistake that you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, she clears so fast that, like, if someone ever ganks anywhere, you can take their entire quadrant of the jungle in 4 seconds flat. And, like, this is a strength that Shyvana has that, like, is still useful even in pro play. You can walk up and one-shot the Raptor camp. And if they fight you, you push them off the Raptor camp.
My point is more just, though, sometimes when we see these unique jungle picks, they just try to make it a basic tank jungle anyway.
That's bad.
In the LCK, when we saw Jax come in, and it's just played as Cinderhulk first. So I've actually played a lot of Jax jungle. I like playing a lot of these sorts of things. I love playing Kale jungle. I love playing Jax jungle. I like playing some different stuff. And I was super excited, and then he went Cinderhulk, and I'm like, at that point, why aren't you just playing Gragas or something? If you're just going to be a CC bot anyway. Yes, he actually, in the game that I'm thinking of, I think this was even playoffs, he did win. But point just being that if you're just trying to turn another champion into a default tanky dude, well, the most popular default tanky dudes are the most popular ones for a reason.
Yeah, I agree. You need to go into their strengths, and it requires you learning how to play around them, which is not easy, and it's why pros don't learn it. And they're optimizing their strategy, like they're optimizing practice time, and that's why we won't see her, even though I do think she's playable.
Cool. Final Twitter question: Mr. Xshun says, "Summoner's Rift is almost perfect, but do you maybe?
Yeah, whatever.
But do you think Riot will develop other maps for pro play to introduce more diversity?" I thought about this one a little bit. I think a hard no. Like, I think always Summoner's Rift will be our field. The field will be tweaked over time. We got plants this last year. Baron changed his mechanics. Baron changed his spawn times. Drake changed his mechanics. You tweak the map, but just because of the style of game, like, it's the basketball court that we play on every time. What I would like to see in the future, which I don't think will happen, but other sports do out, is introduce a shootout of sorts for tiebreakers called 1v1 Howling Abyss.
Yeah.
Same rules as we see in All-Star. Because I think it's a fast enough format in lieu of playing these tiebreaker games if you're in that situation. Competitive integrity doesn't hold up very well.
But it is fun. And Korea has done this for a number of games.
Like,
they've had
blind pick game 5.
So blind pick, but also in other games, even thinking back to WoW, Korea was the only region to actually do this, but OGN used to have alternating. So 3v3 was a competitive format. They would go 3v3, then 1v1, then 3v3.
For what?
For WoW.
Okay.
And they have done this in a number of different games where they've added in the more like fun or entertaining format over necessarily competitive integrity. And a lot of people liked it. Like you said, blind pick, 1v1s, etc.
Listen, the World Cup of Soccer can be decided on shootouts. And that's the biggest tournament in the world. Hockey has changed their rules to be more exciting, where overtime is now a 4-on-4 period, followed by a shootout because they don't like ties. So I think you can make the argument that this is still a skill test.
It is.
Even if it's a different skill test in Summoner's Rift.
Right.
And I would love it if, like, you can make a couple different rules for it, right? You can have a sub that is just used
that's what
for
I was gonna
shootouts.
say. It'd be really cool.
But I think it would actually be
hire
best.
Box to play Riven
I think
every
it would actually be
game.
best. The guy has to be he has to be on the field by the time you do it. Just for that, it's like, oh, they have a 1v1 ace. That just makes it weird. It's not the team winning. And then it's like, who do you decide to send on? Do you send in Bjergsen or Double Lift when you're tied, right? Like, I think that would actually be really cool, but I don't think we'll see it.
Now you got to play like a Doombots like speed run. Like, it's just something else like really random.
Right. I mean, that's the counter argument. It's like, you could just do more stupid things as long as it's fun.
No, but I actually am on your side of this. Where, like, I want to see. I think it's reasonable to see a shootout format, and like again, if it's interesting because I've to pull this argument apart a little bit. I've seen the case like, well, why don't you just play a real game of Summoner's Rift? Well, like, at a certain point, like, people have to go home, and you only have a venue for a certain amount of time. Like, there are real world constraints to running a tournament. This has to happen, right? Like, public transit can shut down, and the fans can't get home. Do you want them to watch the conclusion of the tournament or not? And if you have delays, whatever. So, like, it's reasonable to say there might need to be a shootout format at some point in League of Legends esports, and you have to find what that proper format is, and maybe there's rules around champ select. Maybe you have a 20 champion pool that you can maybe there are rules to make the 1v1 less
to make
random.
It feel fair, but like, this is really just my master plan to get listeners of
you
the
nemesis
dive.
draft the 1v1. Like, I don't care, it's whatever it is, right?
Yeah, this is just my master plan to get listeners of the dive to support the idea, so they'll apply enough public pressure to be like, 1v1 as a tiebreaker will be the best way to do it. That's the best way to have fandom, and then I get to cast it in the future.
That'd be sweet.
Sounds pretty hype.
Sweet. Thank you very much for the Twitter questions. As always, hashtag the dive LOL. Otherwise, we probably won't see them. @RiotChat, @RiotKobe, @RiotAzael, or @RiotFreak.
It's me.
He's been in 3 episodes.
Been on
That's gotta give him
23
some credit at
episodes.
this
Thanks.
point.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
so thanks for that. That does it for this episode. We're going to be dark next week on account of the World's Group Draw show, as well as some other content we're filming during that week. So remember to tune in 5 a.m. Pacific time. I think I said 6 a.m. earlier. That was incorrect. 5 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesday morning. If you tune in at 6, You were going to miss it, so I hope you listened until the end.
Also, to be clear, going dark, if you don't know what that means, no episode next week, guys.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be out. But make sure also you can catch us for the North American Gauntlet. We'll find out the final seed for Worlds. That's going to kick off Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific, so that is noon.
Basically,
and then we're going to have
coming out.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the whole tournament. Should be pretty fun.
See you then.
See ya.